Hey horror fans, welcome back to Room 237, coming at you with another review and continuing my somewhat marathon of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre series for the month of August. I am now up to 2003's Texas Chainsaw Massacre Remake. Now, I remember when this came out, I was in 6th grade. I didn't see it in theaters, but I did go out and get it the day it came out, and this is the copy I got way back then. Still has the slip cover, still have the tin it came with. I thought this was kind of cool. It folds out to like the actual length of the chainsaw blade. 2 discs, comes with, supposedly real crime scene photos. Now, the thing about this remake is, like other remakes, some people like it, some people don't. Now, the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I absolutely love. It's my second favorite movie of all time. So you would think, and also since I'm not a big fan of remakes by and large, that I wouldn't really like this film. But I actually don't mind this. I actually think this is one of the better remakes to have come out. Because the thing about remakes is there's always been remakes. For as long as there's been film and time, there's been remakes. But prior to 2003, 70s, 80s, and 90s, they weren't that frequent. It wasn't all the time. It wasn't, studios trying to pump out a product. It was filmmakers with a vision and a passion. So they ended up becoming good movies. You had John Carpenter's The Thing, Cronenberg's The Fly, The Blob I even liked. And yeah, you also had pieces of shit like Gus Van Sant's film project of Psycho, because Psycho is my third favorite film of all time. But then in 2003, this film came along. It wasn't a smash hit success. It was a success. It did make some money. So that was when, especially Platinum Dunes, which is a Michael Bay's production company for like up and coming new filmmakers. And with writers like, I always forget their names. Or producers, I should say, Andrew Form and Brad Fuller, and Michael Bay. They kept pumping these out. Right after this, they did Amityville Horror. They did Friday the 13th, which I liked. They did Nightmare on Elm Street. But also, it was like a renaissance where just almost every classic horror film was made. And I think this is the genesis of it. So you have remakes prior to 2003 where once in a while one popped up. This came out, and then this started what I call the era of remakes. Now, that being said, that on top of the original, loving it as much as I do, I still think this is a competently made, decent remake, and on its own merits, I still think it's a fairly good movie. Now, even though, yes, as much as I love this film, I'm not the biggest fan of the Chainsaw Massacre as a franchise. 2, I've grown to like and appreciate. 3's kind of lame. Next Generation Part 4 is dog shit. It's terrible. And the movies that came after this are pointless or stupid. I've not seen Leatherface, the newest one to come out. So this one, and this is what I think a remake should be. It takes the core of what the original was, and it made its own film. This movie can stand on its own. Also, this was the first Chainsaw Massacre film I ever saw. I knew about Chainsaw Massacre. I had never seen it. I actually didn't see it till a few years later. So this was the first one I saw. I thought it was scary when I saw, 12-year-old. And the story is fairly simple. It takes place in 1973. They didn't change that. It's a group of friends going through Texas. They came from Mexico. They bought a bunch of pot. They're on their way to a Skynyrd concert until they find not really a hitchhiker, but a messed up girl walking down the road. They pick her up, and she's sort of the survivor of the last group of people. She shoots herself in their van, and you get this really cool shot. I always thought it was cool. You see everyone in the van, the camera pans back, it goes like through the mouth and out the back of the girl's head, then the head like falls down, goes out the hole in the window. And that's just one of a few, or scratch that. That's just one of plenty of decent shots, because this is directed by Marcus Nispel, who's a German director. This was his first film. He had actually done a bunch of music videos, very experimental music videos. So he had some very creative shots in this. The palette of the film is very well done. Like, there's shots when characters are walking through the woods in daylight and it's kind of dark, but the way the sun is like shining through the trees looks really neat. The house, it's in like this barren field and it's nighttime, but there's like this like John Carpenter-y glow around the house that it's really cool looking. They made Leatherface menacing again. I think this was also the start of hulking, larger-than-life killers, which Jason's always been, but like what Rob Zombie would do to Michael Myers. There's definitely more emphasis on the family in this one. Like Arlie Ermey plays Sheriff, who's part of the family. He's more of the antagonist. He's the one that sort of pulls the strings, like with the family. He's the one that really fucks with the characters. But Leatherface does do plenty of running around, chasing with a chainsaw. He looks, especially compared to the past films, I mean, Gunnar Hansen will always be my Leatherface. Like, this is Leatherface for me. But he's still a big, intimidating, menacing threat. Even the cast, I thought the cast was well done. I mean, Jessica Beil of Seventh Heaven, Eric Balfour from 6 Feet Under plays her boyfriend. Mike Vogel, I don't know what else he's in, but he's a friend. Jonathan Tucker. I like Jonathan Tucker's character. He's sort of like the cynic. And I guess when he auditioned, Nispel thought he looked too sweet and innocent to play a cynic. So he told him to grow out his sideburns and wear big glasses to basically do Dreyfus from Jaws. And it worked. Erica Learson plays, a new friend that they picked up sometime before. Now, Erica Learson, as far as like 2000s go, she's one of the best scream queens. I like Erica Learson way more than like, say, Danielle Harris. But I only know her otherwise in Wrong Turn 2 and Blair Witch 2. I don't think she went on to do much after that, which is a shame. But, you know, it's friends getting picked off in similar fashion to the original. And that's the thing. I mean, it does take some things. Like, you have, you know, a character getting hit with a hammer, dragged into a room with the door slamming shut. You have someone on a meat hook. You have a very long chase between, you know, the lead girl and Leatherface. This is just... how exactly do I want to word this? Because the original was so raw and visceral and like almost like a documentary. This is very cinematic. You know, it has a really good score. The score is done by Steve Jablonsky. He has a very, you know, like a low, ominous score, and then other parts, it's very open and dramatic. I know this review's kind of all over the place, but I mean, with remakes, especially where I've already done the original, it is essentially the same story. I mean, there's different reasons for why the characters are going from A to B, but, you know, of the more recent, or since 2003, I would say this is one of the better remakes. It doesn't take anything away from the original. It does its own thing, and the things it does differently sort of help it stand on its own. Of course, you know, they couldn't quit while they were ahead. They had to do that fucking prequel, which is completely pointless. And also, you know, Sally Hardesty, even though played by Marilyn Burns in the original, is probably my favorite final girl. Either tied or maybe more so than Jamie Lee Curtis in Halloween. She's not really a heroine. Jessica Beil is in this. You know, she finally says, fuck this. You know, really fucks up Leatherface, cuts off his arm. She fucks up the sheriff. She couldn't save her friends, but she saved a baby that was, you know, abducted from the last group of people. And again, I'm sorry this review's all over the place. I really get out of my groove when I work all week, haven't been making videos. But, you know, this is probably going to catch me some shit. This is probably my second favorite Chainsaw film. Even more than Chainsaw 2. I know, but I was never the biggest fan of 2. I like it. I'm just not the cult fan of it like everyone else is. Just, I thought the cast worked. The fact that, you know, they did go sort of cinematic and experimental with, you know, an ambitious director. First-time director. Feels weird saying that I'm actually kind of praising a Michael Bay movie, because I generally don't do that. And, you know, even the additions to the family, you know, it did get to the point where there is a lot of members. You know, you have Arlie Ermey. You have sort of the grandma who's like the patriarch. And they sort of went for realism. You know, where grandpa is in the original sort of like this decayed, like 120-something-year-old guy. You know, they're all like living, moving people in this one. I don't know. I've always liked this film. I don't chalk it up to nostalgia because it's the first one I saw, but I'm not the biggest fan of the other films in the series, and especially with the slew of remakes. You know, this stands out as one of the better ones. It also tried to add some emotional stuff to it. You know, like there's this sort of minor subplot where, Jessica Beil and her boyfriend, they've been dating for a while. And, she keeps hinting that she wants a ring, and he keeps saying, someday, someday. But when he gets killed, and Leatherface is hoisting him up and doing stuff to him, the ring falls out of his pocket. So we see that he had a ring for her for when they got to the Skynyrd concert, but she will never know. Sort of adds emotional layers to it. It does have some eerie moments, like during the attack in the van where Leatherface is wearing Jessica Biel's boyfriend's face. That would probably be kind of startling to see. But I don't know. I've always enjoyed this. I always thought this was a decent, competent remake. And not sure what else to say about that. Coming up next is the next episode of Reslash, which is the Chainsaw Massacre. So stay tuned for that. And sorry this review was kind of all over the place, but I don't know, I'm trying to find my groove again. But anyway, stay tuned for Reslash, and thank you for watching.